A few weeks ago I saw a meme on TikTok where a young girl asked, what did you guys used to do before you had access to all of mankind's information in the form of the internet? And there was a guy who answered who said, we basically just didn't know stuff. And he was kind of right. We didn't have access immediately to information like we do today, but we did have encyclopedias. And in the early to mid-90s there was a big push for multimedia titles. And this is a medium that suits encyclopedias extremely well. Microsoft released many titles under the Microsoft Home brand, and a number of these titles were usually included bundled with a PC. Now, as I recently restored my deck using the System Restore CD, one of the titles was Encarta 95. Now, I think most people would have encountered Encarta as part of one of those bundles that came with the PC, but you could buy it as a standalone product. However, I doubt many people went out and bought it. Now, Encarta wasn't the first CD-ROM based encyclopedia. The first time I ever experienced a CD-ROM encyclopedia was the Grolier, and this was at primary school on our computers there. Now, the encyclopedia you're probably familiar with is the Britannica. The way people obtained the encyclopedia was usually via a knock at the door from a salesman who you'd invite in for a coffee and a chat, and during that chat he'd bring out one of the nice shiny encyclopedias, extolling the virtues of having all of this information, all for a low monthly fee, and you too could have the entire Encyclopaedia Britannica in your own home. And that's what my dad did. One day there was a knock at the door and we were given several cardboard boxes. Not only did we have the big black books, but my dad also purchased the child's encyclopedia with hopes that we'd make use of it. These came in the form of smaller red books. However, I wasn't really the reading type, and trying to get information out was a bit cumbersome. First of all, you'd have to find the index, and then you'd have to find the article. Then you'd have to find the book, and then you'd have to find the page. Well, if you've seen any of my previous videos, you'll know that I'm famously impatient and I want access to instant information. That was one of the things these new CD-ROMs offered. Not wanting to be left on the back foot in this new age of multimedia, Britannica released their own CD-ROM based encyclopedia. And it's these three titles today we're going to be having a look at: Encarta 95, Grolier and the Britannica Encyclopedia, right after this message from PCBWay. Our good friends over at PCBWay have kindly sponsored this video. PCBWay offers a variety of services from PCB production and assembly to 3D printing in various materials, injection moulded plastics and even sheet metal fabrication. They offer a very professional and high quality service for extremely reasonable prices. Check out a link for their website in the description below. This version of Encarta fits nicely on a single CD and works well with the 4-speed CD-ROM drive in the deck. I'm going to start it using the digital Getting Started program launcher, which I briefly demoed in a previous video if you're interested in seeing more. It takes a few seconds to launch and does some weird things with the colours on the display, but then the splash screen opens and
let there be justice for all. Let there be peace for all.
It's one small step for man.
You don't understand. Willie was a salesman.
Say simply, very simply, with hope, good morning.
Now, for those of you who were lucky enough to use this back in the day, I'm sure there's a huge hit of nostalgia for you there. Luckily, you don't need to listen to it each time you launch the program, however, as it stops when you click the enter button. By default, Encarta will remember the last thing you looked at, but will launch the letter A article if you've not opened Encarta before. There are several ways to navigate around, but for me, I used to use the find button the most. What's handy is it allows you to quickly find the article you want to read about, but conversely doesn't help if you're unsure of spelling. The search results don't give any indication of what kind of article you may find. Some are just text, whilst others have pictures, animations, or even full motion video. You can refine your search by the use of the 5 buttons in the Find window. I still think even in this day and age, the interface of Encarta is excellent. It is of course very skeuomorphic, but I think it adds to the charm. The display here is running at 640 by 480 in 256 colours, and of course we're not going to be expecting to see any super high resolution images or HD video. There is only after all so much space on a CD. If you want, you can open the atlas and see a map of the globe. You can click on a country and jump to the article, or drill down to find states and cities and links and articles relating to them. This was pre-Google Maps and allowed the ability to travel the world from your very own computer. So here's where traditional encyclopedias couldn't match the CD-ROM. That is, multimedia and the media gallery. Short books could have photographs and illustrations, but they couldn't have music, animations or video. The only other place I'd seen video was on a TV, and having it back on a computer was really cool. Remember, we'd just upgraded from an LC475, which struggled to play anything back that wasn't postage stamp size. A familiar find window will show up listing all of the multimedia items that are on the CD. Here there are almost 7,200. The media pinpointer can be used to further refine the results by clicking on the media button and then choosing the desired media type.
Yeah, I'm going to try to get on the bottom bolt now.
We had a good aliveness test.
Oh, great. All right. Outstanding. It's hot for me because the arm's very stretched now. Okay. How about a little bit of port? Like 6 inches. I can give you a port.
There are 29 videos available on this edition, and later versions were released over several CDs, expanding the number of media items considerably. The videos here are being dithered, which is why the background in some have quite a lot of noise to them. I personally got a lot of use out of Encarta and have fond memories of it, and I think Microsoft did a fantastic job. It is evident that this innovative software transformed how we access and interact with information. In an era before the internet became ubiquitous, Encarta brought knowledge directly into homes, making it accessible to anyone with a computer. We'll next look at Grolier, which before they were purchased by the Scholastic Corporation in 2000, were one of the largest publishers of general encyclopedias. There will be a lot of comparisons between Encarta and Grolier, as they're remarkably similar. One of the things here that Grolier takes advantage of is the newly introduced auto-run feature from Windows 95. You insert the CD and this appears. You click run and you're ready to go, making it easier for those less versed in computing. It's noticeably slower at launching than Encarta and leads to some awkward silences whilst the CD-ROM furiously tries to load the application. You might expect having it locally installed would help with this, but it doesn't. There are some useful quick tours and navigation help if you need them, or you could just YOLO it and click the start button. Just as with Encarta, if you've never opened Grolier before, it takes you to the letter A article on first launch. I find the information in here to be a bit more in depth, and it's nice to find the references at the bottom of the article rather than hidden behind a click. The related articles button being front and centre is also a nice touch. However, the interface to me seems to lack the polished look and feel that I'm used to, but it does have more or less the same features as Encarta. Images are still relatively low resolution, and you'll need Apple's QuickTime Player installed to allow video playback. There is an included atlas which performs much in the same way as the previous title does. Clicking on a place zooms you in, and then you're presented with links to related articles. To be fair, there are only so many ways to present an encyclopedia, not much room for innovation here, although I suppose having a computerized encyclopedia is an innovation of itself. Neither Encarta or Grolier have the ability to obtain updates from the internet, so information was quickly out of date. The internet still wasn't commonplace, and even those lucky enough to be online probably didn't have the bandwidth for downloading images, and certainly not videos in any kind of reasonable time frame. No, you had to wait for next year's release, and these things were expensive. When first released on CD-ROM in the early 90s, Grolier typically cost between $200 and $300, depending on the version and any additional features. That's about $480 to $725 in today's money when adjusted for inflation, still a hefty chunk of change. The gallery button at the top of the page opens a search window, which works almost exactly the same as Encarta. You see a list of multimedia assets with the icons to tell you what they are, and clicking on one will show it in the right. You can also filter the asset by type, and here we'll set it to just videos and animation. I'm not sure how many are included, but there are quite a number. The videos don't autoplay, but I do like the video presenter window thingy that pops up when a clip is chosen. It's details like this that would have been lost on a younger me, but now I really appreciate.
Astronauts Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins knew that their Apollo mission was one with a difference. Their destination was the moon. As millions watched, the mighty Saturn V Apollo 11 lifted off.
Both titles deliver a rich, interactive learning experience by blending text, audio, video and graphics, making it easier to absorb information in an engaging way. This multimedia approach sparks curiosity, keeps attention, and makes learning feel accessible, offering a wealth of knowledge without the usual effort of hunting it down. In short, the dynamic content holds interest long enough to make learning enjoyable and effective. That's a long-winded way of saying the shiny thing keeps me interested enough to get the smart stuff into my brain without me getting bored.
The Titanic, Queen of the Seas. It was the ship they called indestructible. On a moonless night during her maiden voyage in 1912, the Titanic hit an iceberg and went down. The icy ocean became a graveyard for 1,500 passengers and crew.
The 1990 edition was the first to feature pictures, and the 1992 edition was the first to deliver video and sound. The last version of Groia to be released on CD-ROM was in 2003, but before its demise it was often included on magazine cover CDs for free, in an attempt to increase its dwindling market share, or perhaps to help sell the magazine by advertising included software worth hundreds of pounds. The information is now hidden behind a paywall under the Scholastic Go brand, but the Grolier Encyclopedia should be remembered for being a pioneering resource that significantly shaped the way we access and engage with information. So that brings us to Britannica, and oh dear, I think I must have erased this awful experience entirely from every neuron in my brain, as it is without a doubt the worst one out of the three of this bunch, possibly the history of software ever. Feel free to discuss in the comments. The first things first, it launches a browser? What in the world? A Netscape? Oh boy, this is going to be interesting. The interface is basically a search window, and rather than searching using simple words, you can ask it phrases, which it will successfully not return anything useful you're looking for. From playing around, I've found that it basically ignores words like the, and or, which are all sensible, but what's the point in asking for a phrase if you're just going to search by word anyway? Oh, and the search button will always make a ding, and that in itself is super annoying. Next we need to wait for the search to search the index, and then this creates a page and ranks it. That bit is clever and fancy, but it means it seems to take eons to gather the results, and I can see a teenage me losing the will to live trying to use it. I think my dad was disappointed that it didn't get more use, and that's literally because it's so awful. I can see the advantage of making it all in HTML, as it would mean it might make it easier to port to different platforms, but let the user choose their own browser for goodness sakes. When the search results are back and you open up an article, most of them are underwhelming and not very pretty. It's like the text equivalent of death by PowerPoint. Very few articles I've searched for have any multimedia elements to them. Several I've found have images that can be viewed, but I haven't seen any form of animation or video, and that's despite this edition coming on 2 CD-ROMs. A saving grace are hyperlinks in articles which take you to related pages, and thankfully these load much faster. The interface isn't much to write home about, and it's quite minimal. There are a number of tabs across the top and the ever-present search box, but aside from that, not much else. Clicking on Spectrum is sort of analogous to the Area of Interest menu in Encarta, or the Guided Tour section in Grolier. And Compass opens up some sort of map that I've not explored much. The whole thing is so underwhelming I kind of lost interest with it. Sadly, the online link no longer works, and we didn't have internet access when we originally had this, so I can't talk of what services were available. I also don't think this would be money well spent searching for something and paying for the phone call whilst you're reading whatever results are found. No, for this kind of thing, and for the time frame we're talking about, I think the CD-ROM approach was a better option. So yeah, the less we talk about Britannica the better. I don't see how Britannica could have had such a monumental fail with a product after being the physical book market leader for years. It feels like they looked at all the possible ways of making an application and decided to go in the opposite direction to their counterparts. It's funny in a way because Grolier introduced the first CD-ROM encyclopedia and Britannica introduced the first online encyclopedia in 1994. You could access this at eb.com and then later Britannica.com. It proved so popular that it fell over several times by the sheer volume of people trying to access it, but its days were numbered. In 2001, Wikipedia was released to the world, and that changed everything. Before, you had to rely on companies fact-checking their articles, whereas Wikipedia relied, and still does to this day, on public editors. There are strict rules that the editors must follow, but it may be that the articles cite unreliable sources, so even though for the most part the information is accurate, you should always check your sources. Well, I guess the answer to the young girl's question is, we had encyclopedias, and some of us even had fancy digital ones of varying quality, that once we got back to our house and booted our computer up and then remembered the subject we wanted to search on, we might be able to find it on the computer. Or if you didn't, just go to a library. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. I hope you found this useful, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.